Hello. I want to say thank you for clicking on this video. My name is CH20. I've been an artist for about 3-4ish years, and I want to say welcome. I'm making these videos as a just sort of like a tutorial guide for people who want to like draw in sort of like an anime style, or at least the way that I do. This video series that I'm going to be making is meant for people who have like either just now started or have not even picked up a pencil before for in the way of an art sense. If you do have some experience, that's fine. I'd still be happy to have you here and just to relax and watch the videos. So yeah, I would say if you're gonna do this, it does take some patience, but with this video series, I'm hopefully going to be like going in the absolute like in depth as much as I can to explain my process and how I achieve the looks that I do when drawing artwork. So if you like maybe been watching videos and something's just not clicking, I'm hoping that this sort of in-depth video would essentially help you to get started. This first video is more of a primer video, so if you already know how to like use your art software and all that good stuff, and you know like the very basic fundamentals of drawing, I would probably skip this video and move on to the next one when I eventually upload it. Other than that, if you wish to continue to watch this video, let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, my artwork software is Clip Studio Paint. I'm using the Pro version, but you can use whichever version you like, either the basic or even the more advanced one. This is the first one. I don't know if Clip Studio Paint has uploaded their second iteration of their software yet. But even if you're not using Clip Studio Paint, like say you're using Photoshop or Paint Tool SI, what you learn here can be easily replicated in those softwares, I'm pretty sure. In terms of the tablet I'm using, it's a Huion H610 Pro version 2. It's a very cheap and inexpensive tablet. Mine costed me about $60-ish, and I bought it, I think, straight from the company website. But, you know, if you want to follow this tutorial, and perhaps you don't have the software or the tablet yet, doing this on pencil and paper is just fine too. You might have to erase more than I would have to, and I would have access to more tools, like say the lasso tool, to help resize things. But as far as like any special add-ons, this is pretty much the bog standard installation, so you don't need any additional brushes. And for my tablet, I didn't mess with any of the settings. I don't even think I've set in the proper hotkeys yet. I like to just use the keyboard to input my hotkeys when I use them. And don't worry too much about hotkeys. I will go over them as we go along. I would recommend learning the hotkeys because that will make your work experience much faster and easier, rather than trying to mess with the UI interface to do like your rotations and stuff like that, or to pan the canvas. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. So in order to create a new canvas or a new picture, all you have to do is go to File and New, and it'll pop up this menu. You're most likely going to start on the square 1000 by 1000 pixel, and this is okay. I'm going to just go to the height, and I'm going to bump it up to a 1300. So my width is 1000 pixels and the height is 1300. For the resolution, I'm going to change it to the 300 dpi, and what dpi is basically the resolution of the image. DPI stands specifically for dots per inch. So the higher the DPI, the better image quality, like the less blurry or pixelated it's going to look. Me personally, I think 300 is plenty of DPI. 600 is pretty good, but I don't think you would need to go any further than that, especially for this kind of video. You'd be pretty much fine with staying at 72 if you want to, but I'm going to be going up to 300 for my video, but 72 DPI or anything lower than 300 or 300 exact is pretty good in my opinion. So once you're done, you're going to click the OK button and it'll pop up this, the white canvas. You'll have your paper, which is the canvas thing, the actual white background to it. And then you'll see if you hide it using the eyeball icon right here, it'll go to the transparent layer, which is the current layer you're working on right now. And what this basically is it's just see-through space. So I would recommend having the paper on as you draw because it's just going to be visually easier to see your pencil marks as we go along. Right here is your layers, but you might have already surmised that. The one that you highlight in blue is going to be the one that you're selected on and which one you're working. Pay really close attention to whatever layer you're working on. It's almost guaranteed that you're going to be working on a layer that you don't actually want to be working on. And you might have to either start over what you did, or if you're lucky enough, you'll be able to clip your work out of that layer and put it onto the layer that you properly wanted to. With that said, let's see. Right over here is your brushes. Right now I'm in the pen brushes, and I do have a custom brush right here, but we're not going to be using that at all. We're not even going to be using the pen brushes, to be honest. But yeah, you'll see these are like the main ones, and they typically have like little subfolders in them. And you can do stuff like copy the brushes and modify them as you can. We're not going to be doing that in this video. Again, we're just going to be bog standard as we go along. For stuff that I like to do sketch work, I personally like the darker pencil brush. You'll find this in the pencil under the pencil tab. And the darker pencil brush is definitely got like some weight to it that I like when drawing. Another thing, just a quick tip, you don't have to do this, but I would create a tone chart if you want. It just saves your colors onto a PNG that you can use later on. I'm pretty sure you can make a custom palette around here somewhere in the color options. I just don't want to do that personally, and I just keep my tone chart here. When we are doing our sketch work, I do prefer to keep my color of my brush this bluish gray color. The reason why I do that is because one, the blue-gray is dark enough for me to see visually as I'm sketching, but I can lower the opacity and make it lighter so that I can put line art over it. But we are not going to worry about line art yet. I will go over that in a future video, but for now we're just going to be worrying about sketching. So I'm going to grab the color picking tool. If you don't want to click the color picking tool and you just want to do something fast, using your mouse, you can use the right mouse button to color pick, and whatever you let go of is going to be the color you get. If your pen does have the buttons on it, one of the buttons will allow you to color pick as well as the right click. The other one will just be like the actual mouse button click. or whatever it gets. My thing's not properly hotkeyed. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna be on a new layer. Just a point, just like a quick point, I typically don't name my sketches early on, but just for a good habit, I would rename your layers just so you know which lane you're working on better, and you can just keep track of which layer is which. Like right now, the two layers by themselves aren't bad, but when you're like in the weeds and you have like 50 separate layers, it can get pretty confusing sometimes. And just labeling and being neat and organized with your stuff is always nice. But anyways, you're not here to watch me ramble too much. You want to get some drawing done. So I would say before we do anything like drawing eyes or faces or anything like that, you should understand some very basic shapes when it comes to artwork and just art in general. And what I mean by like that is objects can usually be broken down into basic shapes. So like a basketball, for example, would obviously be like a sphere. An ice cream cone would be like a sphere on top of a cone. Learning how to break down objects into basic shapes is a very good skill and will make your drawing experience easier. So the basic shapes that you're going to want to know are like things like the squares. And you can draw along with me as I draw it. And just so you know, like when I'm doing the rotate, I'm using the R key on my keyboard. And to pan, I use the space key. And of course, I'm dragging the mouse around as I'm panning. Anyways, back to it. The square is probably like a very basic shape. This is probably going to be one of the first shapes you draw, either seriously or just doodling in your school notebook or whatever you got going on. Of course, everyone knows it's got four shapes. They're consistently made of 90-degree angles, but you can make square shapes, just like that. That's relatively a square shape. It's not technically a square in the math world, but for our world here, I would consider that more of a square shape. And just in case for future reference, for your eraser, I'm using the rough eraser. The hard eraser is fine, but it's got pressure sensitivity, so it won't erase the exact size I want to. Whereas the rough eraser, the cursor you see there is what you're going to get out of your erase. So for me, the rough eraser is more consistent. The next shape that you should probably know is the triangle. It's another easy shape to draw. Basically consists of three sides. And triangles come in many different shapes. Their angles usually add up, well, they always add up to 180 degrees. But this isn't a geometry course, so you don't really need to know that. All you really need to know is they've got three sides and three angles. Let's see, the next shape that I would be concerned about, and this shape is pretty scary to beginners, and that is the circle. So you usually get a shape relatively like that. You don't have to draw circles perfectly. It's rare that you ever actually do, especially like when you're doing like professional tier artwork. I know I never draw a perfect shape, perfect circle whenever I'm drawing a face or whatever time I want to draw a circle. So yeah, I mean, so long as you're in the ballpark, you're fine. You don't need to do anything like that's perfect or anything like that. let me just dispel that for you really quick. You can get some basic shape tools here, but I don't recommend using them, and the reason why is because you want to eventually build up your muscle memory of doing these shapes. Another thing that I should mention is that when you're drawing lines and stuff like that, you generally want strong, continuous lines. You don't want to be like hatching it like that as you go along. It's not going to help you in the long run, but I would understand if you do hatch it like that for a while, but you should eventually be moving to more confident lines. But we'll go more into line confidence later on as we go into like the line art section. But yeah, those are the basic shapes right there. And from these shapes we can derive three-dimensional shapes. Before I do that though, I forgot. There's another thing that we need to know. And these are what's called halfway marks. People have different names for these. I call them halfway marks, even though sometimes I'm not putting them at the halfway shape. But generally what a halfway mark is just something, it's a line that usually goes across the shape, the body of the shape, to usually indicate where the halfway point is approximately at. So you know how like you fold a paper and then there's a crease going along that paper? That's kind of what the halfway mark is. Halfway marks are pretty useful, and I would recommend drawing them as you're drawing your shapes. That way you can get into the practice of drawing the halfway marks approximately halfway of your shape. Like that. You know, for a circle, it would be like that. Triangle's a bit tricky, but it would be like something like that. Another way would be like that, and another one there would be like that. You know, stuff like that. But let's go ahead and get to the three-dimensional shapes next, because these are going to be very important to learn in the future. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the lasso tool. You can use the rectangle or ellipse or the polyline. I like the lasso tool the most because I can just create a custom shape and grab where I need. And you can just shrink it down to size and it'd be no problem. But the first shape, again keeping up with the square, would be the cube. So cube has sort of like a front, a back, and some sides. Just like that. It's not perfect, but you know, it's a cube shape. You put some hatching right there for shading. We're not going to worry too much about shading, but that's just to help signify that this is a 3D shape. And you know, of course, in the back there, you know, if it was see-through, you'd just have that shape as well. But we're not going to have that because I want to show the halfway marks. And for the halfway marks, just like before, we find the halfway of the point, which is about right there. Do the same there. Do the same there. Do the same there. You know, so on and so forth. Now you notice that the halfway marks sort of conform with the shape of the object we're doing. They weren't always up and down like that, but sometimes they went along with the shape. Because you have to imagine this thing in a 3D space, and I'll get more into perspective here in a minute, but we won't be going too much into perspective because this just isn't the kind of video series for that. I'll teach you what you basically need to know. Next up, we have the triangle. So you'll have usually what's a 3D triangular prism, and these lines go up to a point like that, and that's your triangle prism. Each side or each face of the triangular prism is made up of a triangle, hence the name triangular prism. The next shape would be the pyramid. So much like the triangular prism, it's made up of triangular faces except for the base. The base is a sort of a square shape. This has got a pretty good high angle perspective, so that's what I'll do. So the face right here is a square, whereas this face right here is a triangle. And that's all really a triangular a pyramid is. If you've seen any picture of Egypt, you've almost guaranteed to have seen a pyramid. It's just that shape. One more for the triangle, but this is going to be blending the triangle and the circle together. So kind of just like the pyramid, the base is made of a circle, and there's no real faces around the side. It's just sort of like round and going across. If you've had any like ice cream, like say from like McDonald's or something like that, you've most certainly eaten. You've seen a cone of sorts. You know, a halfway mark would be like that, going up. You know, stuff like that. Another shape that you're going to want to know is a blend of the circle and the square. And this is the cylindrical prism, or yeah, that's what it's called, a cylindrical prism. So that's going to be two circles and a roundabout face going across. Just erase that. It's going to have halfway marks that look like that. You could just contort. And then last but not least, but the next shape you want to do is the sphere. And it's going to be just like drawing a regular circle. But now you have to imagine it in the 3D space, so I'll just draw a curved halfway mark there and there. So our vision right here is sort of like that. And those are the 3D shapes. Before going on to the next video, I would definitely be practicing drawing these, and I'd be doing a couple of each. This is sort of the building blocks that you want to like understand before moving forward. If you can get these, your drawing experience is going to be much better, at least in my opinion. So I did want to say that, well, before we do that, let's just do sort of like what I would expect that you want to do is drawing shapes, is like sort of combine them and do other stuff with them, like cut pieces out as well. And the idea of why you want to do this is because drawing artwork, while you are working on a two-dimensional plane, the idea is to create the illusion of three-dimensional space. So you can see it's visually a sort of 3D object, even though it's still just 2D pixels on a canvas. But, you know, you can do stuff with the shapes, like if I want to add on like a cylinder here, just boop, boop, right there. Just start adding stuff to it. You know, you can be pretty fun and creative about it. But say you want to take a chunk out. So you want to take like this little shape there, and that little shape there. Drawing that is fine, but it does eventually sort of like disrupt the illusion of a three-dimensional space, because there would be more space behind it. Like, as you can see in the triangular prism here, there is space behind just the front of what we see. So in order to just fix that, return your line back in, and then you should be fine. Probably make that a bit broader. There you go. And that helps give the three-dimensional space that we want to see. Let's see what else before I lose my train of thought. I think that is actually it. So that's just kind of the stuff that I would play. More for perspective stuff as well. Is that you should learn how to draw along these halfway marks when you can. So for example, if I just draw this straight line across, right? I'm going to draw a series of cubes going along this line, or maybe just like 3. And you'd have this cube head up here. It's directly in front of us. So for us, it would appear to be a square. But if we were able to see through the cube, you can see that the other side would start to be a smaller version of that cube. If we were potentially being able to see through it. Now, that's not to say that the side that we're facing is larger than the side behind. They're actually the same size. It's just the way that we view it gives us that illusion. So if you take, like, you make a thumbs up and you put it in front of your eye and move it forwards and backwards, making it further away or getting closer to your eyeball, you'll notice that your thumb grows and shrinks, but it's still the same size thumb. This is sort of the same idea. Over here, we'd probably draw a cube. It's going to be the same height here. Before I go any further, I should probably explain what these sides are. So you'll typically have sides that are length, width, and height. A better way to understand it in art terms would be the A, B, and C. And they don't have any particular labels, so you can just label them any way you want. So for example, these lines that go vertical, let's just call them our A lines. These lines that are horizontal, they can be our B. And these lines that go diagonal, those can be our C. So when we draw a square or a cube over here, the A line is going to be the same. The B line is going to be slightly smaller than the A line. Actually, no, we don't want to draw that. These are, I think, actually going to be C lines. Up like that. There we go. There we go. That's better. They do rotate a bit. I did make it a bit larger than what it should have been, which is fine. That's fine. You just shrink it down to size to where it needs to be. There you go. Just like that. So they are hypothetically the same cube, but now our lines have sort of shifted around a bit. So right there is our B, right here is our A, right here is our C. They're both diagonal, but these lines go in different directions. It's only like these lines that go in the same direction. Like this right here would also be a B. this one right here is a C, and this one right here is an A. So as you're drawing these 3D shapes, it might also be a good idea to label your lines as well. So again, another shape right here. Relatively about the same size as that. Go down, like that, over. I'm running out of a little bit of space, but that's okay. So long as you get the concept, you know. These go towards a certain vanishing point right around there. And these sort of just point in the general direction of these vanishing points. And stuff like that that you want to sort of pay attention to. And of course these work the same way going vertical as well. So that's another thing that you want to keep in check, is that the shapes will just bend and warp as they move around to where your eye line is, which would be right about there and right about along there. So those are the basic shapes. I hope I didn't scare you too much away from the perspective. I would like to go more in depth with perspective, but I just don't think we're quite there yet for it, especially when we just want to draw basic anime shapes or anime girls or whatever. But I will go ahead and also start working on just start drawing like head shapes and get the very basic idea. Sort of like take the concepts that we learned here, like the halfway marks, and start applying it to the actual shape. And hopefully that you'll watch that video too. I would be glad to have you there. Another thing though, before we do go, is I would recommend saving this, what we worked on today, somewhere, so that way you can keep track of your progress as you move along. It's always a good idea to always save your work and just archive it somewhere, either be it on your hard drive or somewhere in like a cloud storage, however you decide. Or maybe if you're doing pencil and paper, you lock it away in like some sort of binder or something like that. Or just keep it in your notebook as is. I know I have plenty of drawing books that have all my stuff in there from when I first started drawing, and I still have them. It's always nice to keep them and just see the progress you made, and you will notice some progress in about a few years. But yeah, thank you for watching my video. Anything that I missed here, I probably will go more in depth in the next video when we start drawing basic head shapes. I will see you then.